Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. This is Cherie Burton. This is a podcast for women who long to feel, express, and be who they truly are. We've got a fascinating discussion with Ashlee about angels coming up, but I wanted to remind those of you who have reached out to me or who have otherwise expressed interest in some of my 2020 ventures. If you saw my Facebook Live on my wall, or if you are a part of my newsletters and are getting updated that way, I am launching a Stand, Speak, Shine School, an online program for women, January 6th. It's 3 months self-actualization program. And I've tailored it to kind of bring into the practical a lot of the things I've been teaching and embodying. And a lot of the discussions we've had on the podcast will revolve around some of these principles. It's actually kind of focused on reclaiming yourself, your worth, your inner and outer beauty, your creative power. I teach an arc of creation based on my creation compass I've developed over a decade, 16-point creation compass rose on abundance, radiance, and connection, that arc of creation. So finding your soul path and receiving abundance that way, feeling abundant, having abundant relationships, having radiant beauty, being vibrant, having and claiming that kind of health. And then of course, the connection piece is all about intimacy, authentic relationships, and inner connections. I have this whole thing on the queendom within, accessing your inner sanctum, which is the seedbed of all your healing and creation that you are about in this lifetime. What we'll do is we'll take 12 weeks and we'll go through the 12 feminine practices, what I call them, the sacred style archetypes, 7 principles of spiritual eating. So it's coming into your own essence and listening to your body and receiving what you need to receive in order to become who you're created to become and be. So it isn't about achievement focus necessarily or anything like that. It's just about coming in to you and claiming your voice, claiming your power, claiming your worth, and remembering your strength, love, and power. And that is standspeakshine.com. I'm taking a limited number of women through and actually will be tripling the price in the spring. So if you want to hop onto this first, I call them the beta group, my testers, this first group of women that I'm funneling through this program for 3 months starting January 6th. So check that out, standspeakshine.com. And I want to introduce Ashlee. Now, Ashlee and I have known each other, a number of years. We've been in the same circles with leadership and business. And, I've always just admired her way. She has a wisdom about her. She just exudes a lot of happiness, a lot of depth and wisdom. We'll talk in our interview about how we actually connected on a more personal basis when she reached out to me when I was going through a really, really hard time in a 1-bedroom apartment in Stockton, California, trying to bring our last child into our home. But her genius, her superpower is to empower women to create joy, to thrive without having to sacrifice their dreams, their body, their health, or even their relationships. So she has this whole experience with angels, and she's going to share that and why that came through for her and how it morphed into what it's become for her. And she is really in her own right a very powerful mother, healer, intuitive speaker, writer, coach, and business owner. So enjoy our discussion about angels, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Women Seeking Wholeness Facebook group. Ashlee, yay! Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. Well, actually, you reached out to me, and you and I were just talking about this, but I wanted and was thinking about and wanted to do something on angels because, it's a pretty broad topic. It's pretty well known thing that not a lot of people are talking about, and I like to talk about things that not a lot of people are talking about. And then you reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've been listening to your podcast, and how about this?" And I was like, sweet, because that is such a cool, it's kind of like, I feel like in spiritual and religious circles, it's the elephant in the room that no one's really talking about. It's one of the elephants in the room. So thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. That's funny that you think it's the elephant in the room. For me, this is just my world. I don't want to do life without angels. They totally are my friends and help me through so many things, which probably, now that comes out of my mouth, I'm like, that probably sounds a little bit crazy, but I just have had too many experiences to deny that they totally help me. So
yeah, well, let's go there. So
what's the thing that stands out to you? Because I know you're a mom. You and I are. I guess I should tell our listeners how we're aligned. So we are running kind of the same kind of business. We're both, excuse me, entrepreneurs in the natural health arena. We work in DoTerra. It's kind of our. And you had listed here on your bio, you're born to be an entrepreneur. I didn't even know the word entrepreneur until I was one, basically. But I like to step into it. But yeah, and we're both really passionate about facilitating breakthroughs. So being a mom and we also love chocolate chip cookies. That's a bonus. We both write, we both speak, we both do coaching. We're both mentors. I think where you and I part ways in terms of our gifts or our, not our interests, but our gifts is that you are super intuitive. Now I want to tell this little story before we get into yours. About how you reached out to me when I was literally in the middle of, and I don't know if I'm sure you do remember this. This was about 5.5 years ago. And I was trying to get this baby girl and I was living in this 1-bedroom apartment in Stockton. Well, it had been 5 years ago, almost exactly. And you knew that I was sort of trapped in this 1-bedroom apartment trying to bring this baby girl home and had to leave my other 4 kids. And anyway, you were just so intuitive about, Sheree, I feel like I can come, I have something for you. And I didn't know it was going to be about angels. I didn't know what you did. I just knew you were super cool. I really liked you. And I cannot tell you, I mean, I probably journaled 5 pages after that. And it just aligned. It was so peaceful. It was just like a hello from heaven. It was exactly what I needed. And it was almost like this baby girl's angels and my angels were like working together. And you knew that my health was suffering and all these things because it was so stressful. But it was almost like because of your gifts and your ability to go there and to just unapologetically say, yeah, this is what I'm getting and this is where it's at. Even so far as to say, yeah, they really like the name you chose for her. And I was like, okay, cool. But I never climbed in to really ask you how you got there. How you got to be so intuitive and so connected to this realm. So, sister, let's hear where it's at for you. What happened? Like, how did you get there?
This whole intuitive thing and study of angels and helping people break through and really just let go of what's keeping them stuck. It kind of just chose me. And I think sometimes we encounter things in life where it's like, it comes in and it's just like an itch you have to scratch. It's like, just, that there's something there for you. And so that's how it was for me. And so I really started diving in and studying and really wanted to learn truth and not just take it from others. And so I would get up, my babies were young. They were only 15 months apart, my boys. And so I would get up like at 4:35 in the morning and study and learn and really just ponder and try to discover what was true for me. And through that, it just really refined my intuition. And I'm still refining it. I think it's like a muscle. Like even if you lift weights every day, it's like you still can't lift the 50-pound weights, right? Or whatever it is. So I still feel like a young student in it, but I have learned to turn to my intuition and to identify it and recognize it. And that has helped me just recognize needs. So like when you were in Stockton, I don't think we were even that close of friends, but it was just like, it would not go away that I could help you. Yeah. And I just have learned, like when that comes, I absolutely have to honor it because it sticks with me, that energy. And I don't like that feeling. I have to respond. I don't have to, but I've learned I feel better when I respond and I show up to serve people and I think that's partly what has refined that intuition is just taking every opportunity, asking really good questions and taking the lessons, right? I had had other experiences where I had helped people. So I knew when your name came to mind, it's like, oh, that's a yes. Okay. Yeah, I know that's a yes. And I can act on it. And I think it's just practice. And I think anybody can do it.
And I think because you and I have been in this, we've been women in business and we're moms and we're all these things, like you could translate that to anything, right? business, parenting, when something comes up or somebody pops into your head and it doesn't leave you alone, which that was a huge gift to me. And I'm so humbled that the universe was tapping your shoulder, because I did need that. I needed something beyond just like sitting down and reading a book or talking to a family member or a loved one or the usual things. And I was in a space also that was pretty aligned with what you're talking about in terms of like really wanting truth. Like, what is the truth? There's like a general truth, like a universal truth that people attach to in various realms. But in my space, in that little 1-bedroom apartment, in my dark night, I needed something really profoundly like, is this worth it? And what I'm going through? Like, is it the right thing? Is it too much of a sacrifice? And so thank you for that. Like, but when we're talking about intuition, when you were studying truth and when you were getting up really early in the morning and you were sort of meeting like God, your soul, discovering what resonates for you. And you said you asked really good questions. I love that, because I think the inquiry process is really pivotal to embarking on any kind of pursuit of truth. Don't you think? I mean, don't you think that's kind of like one of the first steps to?
Oh, for sure.
Opening that up.
And even, it's not even just the first step. Like, even now, if I can ask really good questions, I can get the inspiration and direction that I need. But if I'm stuck and I'm not asking good questions and I'm staying really stagnant in my learning, I don't grow and I don't get what I need. And I thought that I would eventually figure it all out and not continue to have really great questions, right? There must be some formula, or I must figure this out and it'll all be easy. Like, I think we just keep growing, and you grow quicker if you ask questions.
So how did the angels come into this? I mean, were you just like kind of already interested in it and then just started asking and asking and asking? Or how did that evolve for you?
Honestly, the very first experience, I think that I always kind of believed that there were angels. And I had studied Joan of Arc, and she heard voices, which at the time, everybody was really critical of her, right? And probably some still are. But I could see Joan of Arc just as a force for good. And I think that we're all wired that way, right? And so I just kept thinking about angels. And then I had my little babies, and I had a very distinct experience with one of my grandmothers who I have never met. She passed away when my mom was little. And so I had never met this grandmother, but I just felt like as I was taking care of these kids, and as every mom knows of young babies, it's always a little while. And you're always aware of your inadequacies, right? And so that's where I was at. But I just could feel my grandmother by me. And I was like, oh, that is the weirdest thought, that like, why am I even thinking about her? And then I just felt, no, she really is here. And then I remembered that my mom had talked once about a pen that she always wrote with, and the smell of her, she, like, some books and papers had a certain scent, and I thought of that aroma, and I was like, this is super weird. But I just knew, and I was in a vulnerable place where it was like, oh, I'll take angelic help. Like, if it's that there, like, sign me up, because I was in over my head, right? And there was so much happening in my life. And so once I realized that I did have help, I just started studying about it. And I don't know, just little things confirmed it. So like in Luke 4:10, it says, he shall give angels charge over thee to keep thee. And that gave me such comfort. Like, I wasn't doing this alone, even if it felt lonely. And I had 2 kids crying at me and was trying to figure other things out, starting our business. I just felt like I was being lifted up and that I wasn't alone. And that just gave hope. And so I've held to that forever.
Yeah. So what was the sort of bridging experience or moment or evolution into just having, these intimations and strong feelings about your grandmother, and then being super interested in studying about it, and then just knowing that you had that support? How did it come through so strongly for you that you then began to help other people to And how did you sort of develop that?
So at this time, I was studying so diligently that I was being taught everywhere. And so even like going through the grocery store line or going to Target or going to church, like normal places, I was having little spiritual impressions. And it would be like watching a woman struggle with her kids who are absolutely screaming and she's ready to beat them, right? We've all been there. And I would just like have the thought, like, she needs help. Like, could you send some of your angels to help her? And I'm like, everybody go. Like, I know my angels calm me down. Go help this poor woman out. Right.
Well,
because I know that she's not showing up how she wanted to in that moment. Right. And the kids need to be calmed down. But I just found like the energy shifted. And so I kind of was just being aware and open, and also cautious because I wasn't sure what I thought about all of this and I wasn't sure where it fit in with my beliefs. And that's why the studying was so critical and really making sure. And I started working with others. It was actually through an online chat group. And I'm pretty sure you know Leslie Householder, right?
yeah. Yeah. I've interviewed her.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought you had. I was like, I swear I listened to that podcast. But it was an online like Yahoo group type thing that she ran, and somebody on there was struggling, and it was like I instantly knew what they needed to know, and so I just made a little comment, and the person reached out to me and was like, "That's exactly what I needed to know. I can't even believe this." My relative had said the exact same thing, and I was like, oh, it just came to mind. Like, but she was like, would you work with me? And so I really started studying how to help people. And I was like, okay, we can try it. But she really started spreading the word to others. And I just worked by word of mouth for people. I never intended to be in this arena or help people that way. But I also couldn't deny what was there. And sometimes these angels are so funny. Like they all have personalities. And sometimes they're very bossy at times. So it's like if the impression comes and the thought comes, I double check my source and make sure what I'm listening to. But if it's there, like I've got to help. Like that's why we're all here, is to use our gifts and to help one another. And so it just naturally unfolded. And I think that's true of all gifts, whether you're a writer or you are a designer or you're whatever, like we're meant to show up that way. And so they start to naturally unfold, I think, almost always. And then, of course, you do the work to really refine it, right? But
so you just started to get these little impressions about people that you don't have any particular connection to. It just sort of came, and then you acted on it, right? And I think that's key. Well, like, what if you had never said that to that person? You know, then you wouldn't know that, you wouldn't have really started to hone and develop that gift necessarily. Or
yeah, it's true.
Or the angels of that person wouldn't have known to talk to you. How does that work? How do they like, I'm such a practical person. I mean, I love all this, all the mysteries and spiritual things, but I'm also like, practically, how do you think it works? Like on the other side, do you think there's like teams that get together and they're like, hey, Ashlee's hopping onto this Yahoo group. Oh, hey, this person is, let's use Ashlee.
I honestly do think, I think it is that way. And I don't know if that's actually true or not, because I think sometimes we have to understand heaven through our own words. And I'm not sure that that's really how it works over there. I think it's more evolved, but that is how I think it works. I do think your angels that day got with my angels and they're like, hey, get her, she can help. And they're like, okay, she's a little bit distracted, but we'll go kick her a few times. And it does take a few times sometimes for me to respond and recognize, but my goal is to listen the first time and respond.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful way to walk through life. I think, you know, one of the things that fascinates me, and I think that it would be fun for us to break down kind of just, again, practically, there's a lot of voices clamoring in our mind space and in our head space. And I think people get confused about which is my voice, which is, God, the voice of God or the Holy Spirit, or however you want to say that. What are the adversarial voices? Because, we get oppositional entities. What are and sometimes we think that they are oppositional entities when they're actually just the toxic voices we have programmed ourselves with. And then or we've been programmed with from others. And then there's like angels or a lot of people, and I wanted to differentiate between angels and guides. Maybe they are sort of the same, but I think that we're so impressionable because we are these multi-dimensional, multi-sensory beings. And I know that we could go into a lot of metaphysical stuff around that, but basically, like, I guess breaking down, how do you personally know when it's Ashlee talking? Because Ashlee's very smart. You're very wise. You have a great soul. You have a lot of life experience versus maybe the Holy Spirit versus an angel. Like, how do you know in your body the difference?
There's so many parts of this question. I think the first thing I want to say is sometimes I've listened to things like this and inadequacy can come up because we're not having the same experiences as the people speaking. And so I first want to speak to those that may feel like this is outside their experience or outside their gifts, and let you know that your gifts will unfold and your awareness of angels will unfold in exactly the right way for you. And it doesn't have to be the way that works for me. I've helped so many people over the years that I just really believe there's multiple ways that this can work. But for me, I had those morning appointments and really studied and really asked, like, okay, what voice is this? And journaling. And it takes time to know voices, right? But if you were to call me and not even say, hey, it's Sheree, I would recognize your voice because I've heard it enough that I know it, right? Mm-hmm. Where some of our other mutual friends, I wouldn't recognize their voice, but I would recognize it as safe. And I would still listen to it because I trust my heart, right? But one of the things I do is just even setting aside dedicated time. So sometimes I will just tell whoever I want to be talking to, if it's Heavenly Father or if it's an angel or whatever, I'll just say, okay, 11 o'clock, we've got a date. And my intention is that that's who I'm talking with. And as I've done that over the years, their voices are distinct and different to me. That said, I've done this type of stuff for, 14 to 15 years. And I still have moments where I'm like, okay, wait, is that me? Or is that who's talking? Yeah. So I just take a deep breath and clear it out and get myself really grounded. And then I start journaling and asking questions really conversationally. So just like if I were to take a class from you, I would say, okay, Sheree, teach me about this. And so I might write down, okay, angels, teach me about this. Or, okay, God, I want to know this. And sometimes the answers don't come immediately. Sometimes they do. But I also found that learning in really safe ways mattered to me. So by that, a lot of times people will talk to me and they're like, well, I want to go figure out how I'm going to make my $1 million. Or I want to figure out how to resolve this relationship with my dad that's totally crazy right now. So I'm going to ask my angels about that. But these are such passionate things. It's really hard for us to get quiet and still. And so I actually started with silly things like, okay, angels, if you're here, like, tell me what to make for dinner as I'm going in the grocery store. And they totally would. I would have like the thought like, hey, you better go grab a bouillon cube. And I'm like, bouillon cube? Like, I do not need that. And then it would be like, you totally just ask for help. Do you want it or do you not? I'm like, I will go get the bouillon cubes, 2 boxes. Let's double up.
No, that's
like,
interesting.
But that was
something. Yeah, I was just say so. I remember a mentor telling me years ago, and it's just so funny that you're bringing this up because they told me the same thing. They're like, just give them assignments. They wait. Like we think it's stupid and it's like really silly things. Like, and this is, I think, where people get like, pray about the car keys. Like, where'd I leave the car keys? And it's kind of a running joke in a lot of circles. Like, does God really care about your car keys? Well, if it's important to you, it's important to your angels. So we're kind of working on all the same team, right? But I can think of times in my life where I had an impression to ask, because they don't, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it kind of works this way in the spiritual realm because they don't usurp our free agency. So we have to ask.
Mm-hmm.
We have to give the assignment
or totally
invite. We have to be in an invitational space around that. But they're like chomping at the bit, right?
Yeah, totally. And they are eager and ready to help. But you are so right about free agency. And one of the things I found was even just praying, okay, Heavenly Father, these are the bazillion things on my mind. And if the angels are available, this was when I wasn't quite sure, right? And I was still figuring it out. But it's like, hey, if there are angels and they're available, I need them to help me with these 3 simple things. But it was silly stuff that if it hadn't resolved and I hadn't had help, I would have been okay. Right. I wasn't desperate about these things, but as those little things happen, like I was just looking at my journal and I just write it out as an angel list. So it's like, I've got my to-do list and the angels have theirs. And it's like, if the angels are available, these are my top priorities. But it was silly things like, and at the time we owned a property management company. So the lists that I've pulled up are all about that, but it's like, thank you for helping me figure out the tax bill at 918 South. Like, and I write it just thank you, right? And thank you for telling me what the menu should be for the next 3 days. Thank you for telling me how to soften Kathy Holt in that conversation. Shout out to Kathy Holt. I'm sure she's lovely now, but she was a difficult customer, right? And so rather than like, I'm praying for peace, I'm praying for inspiration. But I'm like, angels, like if there's somebody who's awesome at menus, like get the heck over here and help me out. And if there's angels who are awesome at technology, like, okay, technology angels, I'm open, like, and little thoughts will come. But you're totally right. Agency is part of it and we have to invite them in or at least be open. Like I didn't start off fully open, just like there may be something to this. And then I was having little things that would suggest, okay, there's something here. But now I'm like, come on, angels, let's do this day. Is everybody ready? Like, let's go.
Well, I love the idea too, like, of, you know, cause I have young adult kids and, I'm always worried about like, you know, when they get to be, they're all, you know, kids that are graduated from high school and they are off and running and I found myself, and especially even when they were teenagers, just like, please, angels, go with them, you know? And talking even about Stockton when I was told unequivocally by God, 100%, that girl is carrying your daughter. And it was completely wrapped in so much dysfunction and seeming chaos. And there was an order to it that I had to trust, but I didn't completely at the time. That's why the answer was so strong, because it needed to be strong. But anyway, I would pray because this girl was not taking care of herself. And I was in another state. She was in California. So I would pray for angels to protect her. Don't get in a hot tub. Don't take that drink. Don't, you know, like that girl who was praying for free agency. But you better believe I was praying for protection around her womb space for this baby. And I was asking, and I was petitioning angels. I think the perception, and this is maybe where you can help some people who have a misperception or maybe a more medieval concept of angels in terms of like they all have wings and they're, you know, maybe they do, I don't know, but I think it's metaphorical, right? Like they can just fly to you, they just come to you, they're and that the wings represent just that hovering, inclusivity, protective kind of, it's, you know, to me, that's what it represents. But how do you, what's your perception of angels? Because I know there's archangels, which we can totally talk about, but then there's just angels that are given charge specifically for specific people. Or are there also angels that are assigned? This is like a 10-part question, so I'm just going to try to condense it down. So different angels are given different assignments.
You're good.
So different angels are given in different assignments based on, would you say maybe God or whatever people perceive that to be, the highest order of the universe, the higher power source, sort of like sending those angels to particular people? And then are there also guardian angels that are assigned indefinitely to people, like from the time they're born?
Yeah. So I think, yes, I do think we have guardian angels. I think they are often our ancestors that have passed on. I think that they sometimes have different assignments. There's times where I will feel a closer relationship maybe with certain ancestors, and then it almost drifts away. And not because I've necessarily changed. Sometimes that's the case, but it's almost like just their assignment moved on. But I don't think anybody is left without protection. I think you've always got some angels who are assigned to you. And I do think they are sent by God, right? He's our number one focus. But just like he uses us to answer prayers or to help others along, why would he not use angels? Like, it makes total sense to me. And it also makes sense to me that angels at times could be motivated on their own, right? Sometimes Heavenly Father doesn't have to tell me, hey, Ashlee, go help so-and-so. Like, I just love them and have the desire. So I step in and help because I know that they're open to it. Right.
Yeah.
For me, like, I don't know that angels have to be clearly defined in order for people to benefit. Like, if people listening are like, oh no, my angels have wings, fantastic. Like, they're probably all colors and shapes, right? Like, my angels don't have wings. Like, they're more just like people that have passed. And sometimes I can really sense what they physically look like and are, but more often it's just their personalities and their energy and, I don't know, their essence almost.
Yeah. It's interesting because you're talking about the humor thing. It's beautiful that there's such diversity, and it feels like, at least when I am in an intuitive space where I feel a presence come in and I'm like, oh, what's this? Who's this? And sometimes it's funny, the funny, lighthearted person. I'm like, I wonder if that's my grandma, because she's like that, or I wonder if it's a different entity that's just there in support of me that I had a spiritual connection to. I will say that my unborn children came through announcing dreams, 2 of them. And also my daughter that I was first pregnant with visited me a lot during our pregnancy together. So I think, like I said, there's so many domains here when we're talking about basically unembodied entities, which sounds super cold, but there's a spectrum, right, of what their missions are, if you will, from God, as you said. And I keep, even having a sister who passed away and feeling her come in like the most random times. She's super funny too. Just like the most random, seemingly like she's kind of laughing along with me at something. And like you said, if you were and this earth is always a model for heaven. So the people that we feel drawn to connect to, and the people that we feel a sense of protection over, the people that we love, that we care for, that are on our minds, if there was a way for us to fly to them, we would. So
yeah, absolutely.
Fascinating to me that there are angels that are very interested in our work here. I will say, especially like because of all of the resurgence of the feminine healing and more people opening to their intuitive gifts and stuff right now, I think the other side is just tickled pink because we're finally tapping in. We're finally doing yoga. We're finally meditating. We're finally exploring these things without fear. And that's because the other side is all about love and not fear. It feels aligned that would start to even manifest even stronger in the days and years ahead.
Yeah, I think so. My awareness, just of others' experiences, and I mean, on one hand, they're so simple, and on the other hand, they're completely profound, right? But it's little things like what you're mentioning, like just feeling a presence, which is actually huge if you stop to think about it. It's always both, but I think those experiences are happening more and more. And I think people are open because we need help. Like, it's kind of crazy out here. So
tell me about, I know you had mentioned to me previously, you had an experience in Panama.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So, yep. It was a year ago, in Panama. My sister-in-law lives down there. And so we had gone down there for Thanksgiving, and I had an experience with my family that wasn't just for us. And that's partly why I reached out to you, because as I ponder, okay, where does my focus need to be? It was like, get on a podcast and talk about angels. And it was specifically to share this experience. And when the experience happened, I knew that I was being taught, and I knew that it wasn't just for me. But what had happened was we were staying in these condos right on the ocean, and it had like the best pool, and nobody was there. There were 2 giant buildings, and of the 2 buildings, like there were only 3 condos that had been occupied. So we had been there for a few days, hadn't really seen anybody. So my kids were loving the pool because they didn't have to worry about splashing anybody. They could do whatever they want. Like, it was like we had our own resort. It was so great. And so we had gotten really comfortable with the kids going down before us and playing. And my kids at the time were 14 and 12 and 7. So good swimmers. And we had taken my uncle with us. So there was usually an adult there watching them. But this particular moment, we had decided, okay, we're going to let the kids go swim for a few minutes while we grab dinner and bring it back. So it was going to be just a short amount of time. And so we went and grabbed the food and came back, and we started to head up to the condo and realized, oh, those kids locked the door. They were supposed to leave it open for us. So we had all of our grocery bags and just headed to go get the key from them by the pool. And we saw Jackson standing on the edge of the pool. And we had watched him do dives all week. And it was like, I don't know that you should be diving. This doesn't seem deep enough, but you know how boys are, right? And it's like, no, I've got this. So I had watched him do it 50 times. But as we walked up holding all those grocery bags, we knew, like, he dove, and it was like, that was totally off. Like, this is going to be a huge problem. So we ran to the pool, and he jumps out, and he is absolutely completely bloody everywhere. And so, I mean, everybody was just mortified, right? But he was walking, and so I was like, okay. And so it took several hours to get him to a hospital. The local hospital was closed, and luckily we had taken my uncle with us, and he speaks Spanish. And so, but roads were closed, and all sorts of crazy things happened that night, but they were able to go and finally get the stitches, and he came back. Well, the next 3 nights I was woken up, and it was like I was shown in these dreams the scene from different angles. And what I was seeing every time is a view that I couldn't see when we were running up on the pool. And that was just looking over top of the pool. And I could see these angels just lifting him up to a different angle. And so he ended up hitting his head in a spot where it was just on his forehead. So he got stitches. But had he gone straight down, like, I could just see in this dream it playing out, and it could have ended in complete paralysis, right? And we're in a foreign country. And it was like each night, the exact same time, I was woken up in multiple ways, shown it. And it was just evidence to me that angels are around us all the time. And I always hesitate to share the story a little bit, because we have all had experiences, including me, where it's like, well, why didn't the angel show up on that one? Like,
I think that's where people really struggle, honestly, is,
yeah,
why did their angels save that child, and that child's angels save that child, but my child angels, he's tortured and beaten and starved and in sex trafficking. You know what I mean? Like
totally.
That is a valid, that's a very valid spiritual dilemma that we see with people. And that's where they get bitter too. Do you want to speak to your thoughts around that? I have a few thoughts, but I'm curious about yours, especially because that is such a, you were woken up and shown the specific ways in which he was preserved.
Yeah. And it was exactly the same for 3 nights. And I told him later, I'm like, you realize that you were totally saved in that moment. He's like, yeah, I could feel it. Like, and this is just a kid who's into just being with his friends and baseball. Like, his thoughts aren't in this world, right? But this angel world, they're right here, present wherever he is. Yeah, I don't know, Sheree, why it works that way for some and it doesn't on others. Because I mean, currently we've got a couple situations and it's like, angels, I know you're there. Like, come fix this. Like, but what are your thoughts? Teach me.
Well, I just feel like it comes down to the soul contracts. And I feel like there's so much order in the universe. And that's why we get to surrender into it, because we don't see the entire view. We don't see the entire picture. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like I've heard, for instance, I attract a lot of people who have either lost a loved one to suicide or they are contemplating or whatever. And it's people you would never, ever think were contemplating that are. But, and especially because I've lost a sister that way. And it's like, there were times, I mean, she was a mother of 5. She was severely depressed. And there were other times that she was very suicidal and very private about it. And somebody in the family would get some kind of impression, like call her or go over there. Mm-hmm. Right. But the day that she died, nobody got anything. Like there wasn't, how do I say this? It was kind of her choice, her soul choice, her time. I've heard of people that have, you know, been ready to jump off a cliff or do something, and then something shows up to save them, or somebody drives by or whatever. And there's that. There's also just some people descend, or they're, you know, victims of an accident or crime or some kind of really bad trauma. And we think, oh my gosh, like, why would God allow that? Why would those angels allow that? And I think in those instances, what angels do is they lift the soul out of the body or do something protective. Because usually in that kind of trauma, there's a total disassociation. And that's why people can't deal with the trauma until later. So there's so many things that, like you said, we're always supported, but some people literally, as part of their life plan before they came here, or part of their soul contracts and purpose and what they specifically wanted to learn, or how they wanted to lift the consciousness, they chose to incarnate into a body or a set of experiences that will help the overall growth of humanity in some way. So, you hear, like, you know, those one that comes to mind, a story that comes to mind is when the shooter came into the elementary school, and some kids saw a woman take them into a classroom, and that woman basically didn't exist, right? You hear these kind of stories about some of the children were saved and some weren't. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it's like, I don't look at it as, well, the children that died were not protected, or the children that passed away were somehow, God allowed that. And the thing is, yes, random things happen, but how we leave this earth isn't always so random. And it's all part of our path and the furthering of the collective. So those children that died in that, and the children that were preserved, just had different contracts. And there's a really good book called Sacred Contracts by Carolyn. I want to say it's by Carolyn Mice, that goes into a lot of that. And there's other books I've read, but the whole thing of it, some people have a hard time about an intervening God when there's so much poverty, sickness, trauma, darkness. It's like, why does God choose to intervene over here and not over here? But really, it's that polarity, in my view, that's manifesting. It's those sacrificial lambs. Honestly, it's those souls who are like, yeah, I'll descend into that. Yeah, I'll evolve as a soul. That will help me grow. And it's sometimes the more privileged circumstances where the growth may not be as pronounced for their soul. So it's all perspective, but I do one experience comes to my mind where I can definitely say there was absolute intervention. I mean, there's a lot, but there's one. I was 20, probably just barely 20 years old. My family had moved from Wyoming to California. So I was driving in the Bay Area, and I was driving a stick shift, and I was praying the entire time because I was so stressed out. I didn't understand traffic and whatever. And it was just so stressful. And I was at a stoplight, and it was a very, very busy intersection. And I was looking at traffic one direction and starting to edge my way. And I put my foot on the gas to turn left because the light was kind of yellow turning red. And literally something picked up my leg and slammed on the brake. I wasn't even looking. I didn't even know what was going on.
Wow.
And the reason I know that was an intervention is because the immediate thought was you were protected. You were saved. You were, but then I had a car accident, when I was 27 where I broke ribs and herniated my back and had to have back surgery and had a baby in the backseat. My sister went into premature labor, and I'm like, well, what happened there? But then I also think maybe it could have been a lot worse too. Maybe I was protected in that situation too, but I maybe needed to have that particular car accident without that total intervention. So anyway, that's my long diatribe on that. It's easy to get cynical when you are a victim of trauma, or you're seeing all of the distortion around the planet and all of the seeming imbalance around the darkness and the light work that's supposed to be happening. And we don't know what's going on in angelic realms behind the scenes in that chaos. Those people are still very much held supported. And I say those people, but I mean people that are in like third world, abject poverty, sex trafficking. I'm talking like the basest sort of human conditions. And I'm in this privileged condition, and I'm like, maybe their soul is so advanced that they came in to have a greater, more compassionate, more, dare I say, sacrificial life, to shine more light on what needs to be healed here. I don't know. So anyway, that was a huge long.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you that I think some of those things are possible. I think also we don't see the full story, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's possible, like your experience of having surgery after a car accident, there may be some key person that you're going to be able to relate with and serve with and understand in an absolutely critical way. And you wouldn't have the understanding without it. But we don't see all of those things. And it just is hard to know. But I do think that we can have little moments every week, even, of knowing we're not alone and that, okay, somebody's helping me. And I think, those who are in really just deplorable, awful situations, I think part of their purpose is, are you and I going to help them? And do we see them, and do we change and make it better? Right?
Right. Exactly. And I used to have this whole survivor guilt. Like I was born in this family, and then this happened, and now I realize the heavens are so organized, and our soul incarnation is so timed perfectly that we are in the realm we are meant to be in. But like you and I, we think globally, and we've been able to go out and travel and see things and look beyond just the borders of our homes, even though we are moms and we're super, I know you were at your daughter's dentist appointment this morning, texting me, like that's our life, right? But also knowing if you're empathic, if you're high intuitive, you cannot rest until you find ways in your own domain to shift these conditions. And so that's a whole beautiful part of coming into your soul path and saying, yes, I love what you said about when you're giving the angels assignments, you're like, okay, thank you for finding the spice on aisle 8 or whatever. You know what I like? You're just like so specific around, but The other thing you said is the opening, like you have to be open, and gratitude is an opener. It's in my research, it's a sensory portal opener. So when we give gratitude, because it's one of the highest calibrated emotional states that have been measured, and if not the highest, praise, gratitude, it's all the way up there. And so when we go to a space of thanking in advance, that is so powerful because it shows faith, right? It shows like this is going to happen because I'm like claiming that you're already going to do this for me. And there's many precedents in scripture where when people go to that space where they're just like, it's done. Thank you. Thank you for it, like it being done. I think where people get hung up though is like, isn't that a little presumptuous? Like I'm being a little bossy to the like. What are your thoughts on that? Like I have thoughts on it too because I've kind of worked through that. But maybe bossy is not the right word, but like presumptuous. Yeah, like, well, who am I to just go command the spiritual realm?
I spent so much time really getting clear on this that I am 100% clear that God is in charge. And so if he doesn't believe it's in my highest good to have angels helping me with the little things today, I am okay. My faith isn't going to change. I know where I stand in that. So to me, it's kind of like if I ask my friends for help, right? And we do this all the time, right? You and I share business tools back and forth with several others of our peers. And it's like often questions are asked and there's an easy answer. And sometimes questions are asked and there's not an answer. And I'm okay with either outcome, right? So if I ask, I'm like, hey, angels, can you help with XYZ? Thank you for, if I just looked at my day today, it's like, thank you for orchestrating my errands so that they go quickly. Thank you for giving me inspiration as I drive to Idaho. Thank you for, I got to think of something fun in there. Thank you for making sure I pack all the right things. Like if that all happens as planned, I'm so grateful. I'm like, oh, those angels came through again. I just love them. But let's say I get to Idaho and I forgot my underwear or whatever. I'm not blaming the angels or upset. I'm just like, okay, well, this is fine too. I'm so grateful for the experience to be okay right here, right now. Like, I don't know. I just am really flexible on what they deliver. And I find that they deliver so much.
So you said something about you do. Is that part of your angel list that you told me about? Or just that you just do? Is it more on the run? Do you structure it out? Do you write it down, or do you just kind of go through the list in your mind?
So I used to just write it out every single morning because I was really testing, like, is there truth here? What is this? Right. So I was looking for evidence and exploring. Now I'm familiar enough with several angels around me that it's like, hey, angels, we've got to go do XYZ. Like, could you help with this? And I just feel like they're like my friends. Just like if I asked you, hey, Sheree, could you come help with XYZ? You would tell me yes. Right. And I can feel their willingness to help. So sometimes it's just a casual ask. During busy seasons when I'm creating a lot and I feel the pressures of life, I will just sometimes text it out on my phone, like angel list. Thank you for XYZ. Thank you. Whatever. Right. And I'm just passing it off. Like when I'm really great at this, I picture myself like almost like we're a board meeting coming together. And it's like, okay, angels, I've got this part. I can show up, but I'm going to need you to sort out these 5 things. And I just can tell if they're on it or if it's like, you're going to need to grow a little bit today, Ashlee. And I'm like, okay, that's all good. If you have extra time, go help my kids. Like, I'll figure these things out. But I'm not coming at it in terms of desperation. Like, I'm coming as a partner. And it's like, okay, this is for the greater good. This is what we want. And keeping my total faith in God first, right?
Yeah.
And that's the belief system that works for me. But I do think faith is part of it. And I don't know, faith becomes easier when we have seen some things work, and I've seen some things work. So I'm like, okay, let's try something else.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about, it makes creation very exciting when you know that you have this ability or connection, and you have this birthright, honestly, to like you say, gather your board, gather those who are in support of your highest good and say, hey, how can we make today a blessed day? How can I be used for the greater good? How can we work together? Another story that comes to my mind, and I'd love to hear another one of your angel stories, but another one that comes to my mind was when I was preparing for the Mrs. Utah pageant, the first pageant I did. Well, actually it was the second, because the first pageant I did was, I would have placed a lot higher but my evening gown was an absolute disaster. It was like kind of like a prom dress. I didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, the judge's feedback was like, you should do another pageant, and this time you should wear a different gown. And so I did, but I was having a hard time.
Like, oh,
I was having a really hard time finding something. I had, little kids, and I, this is like 16 years ago or something. And I just wanted to look classy. I didn't have the time. This is like, there wasn't a lot online back then. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? And I only have this much money and I have to get sponsors. And so I was super stressed. I remember praying about it. And I remember thinking, I don't think God cares about my gown. I want to ask some female angels like who would be really all over this. Maybe God, I'm not saying that God didn't care. It was just like, surely he's got some way of bringing, like, there's somebody who knows precisely the gown that would look great on me. And I wanted to be more conservative. I just wanted it to be me. And it was so interesting. I went to this lady's house, and she was kind of doing gowns out of her basement in Orem. And I started trying stuff on, and I was like really disheartened, and she didn't have that much stuff. Then I see this, and I knew that I wanted to wear white. That was one of my requests. I want to wear white. I looked over, and there was a white gown hanging up kind of by her kitchen area. And I was like, oh, what about that one? She's like, oh, I don't know. I can't remember. She said like this girl was going to wear it, and then she brought it back, and she still might, but I don't think I'm going to give it back to her. And it's got this stain on it. And it's kind of, I'm like, well, can I try it on? She's like, okay. And I tried it on, and I was like, this is the one. And I got chills through my whole body. And it was almost like I felt celebration on the other side. Like, yeah, we picked this out for you. Isn't it nice how it came? Like, we're so creative. Like we, and she just gave it to me for like $100 or something. And all the other gowns were in upwards of like 600, 700, 800 into the thousands. So that was a total like, and I often reflect on like, why didn't I develop that? I mean, here that was 16 years ago. Why did I think that, okay, that was a pageant, right? But why didn't I think that could happen in other domains in my life? Why did because, I don't know. I never really developed, like you said, the spiritual muscle of petitioning my angel team or giving assignments, because maybe I was just like, I felt that insignificance around it. Like, okay, well, maybe for a pageant, they would do that for me, but like what color nail polish or finding the best color nail polish. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like the spiritual, how interested are they? Like in the littlest tiny things. And I think I just formed a belief that they really aren't. But I think now I believe that if it's important to me, no matter how seemingly insignificant, if it's important to me, it's probably important to them to support me in that.
I think so. And I think too, I mean, look in the scriptures, just at all the different angels, right? They all do different things. So to me, there's specializing angels. So, and I think too, we love using our talents and gifts, right? So if you give them a chance to show up with their gifts, it's like, oh, I've got the best assignment today. I got to go help Cherie pick a dress out. I've been waiting for somebody to want to do that. Like, I'm so excited. Like, I can just see your angels being on call and being like, it is the best day ever. Like, we're going to have so much fun. And I think that's when angels do get fun, is when we step out kind of the norm and challenge our beliefs a little bit. And like, okay, like, and staying unattached, right? So that can develop and that muscle can get stronger. And that's just like if I were working out and checking muscles in the mirror, they're not there immediately, right? But little signs are sometimes there that things are working. But yeah, I think they want to have times like, I mean, they're just sometimes funny and silly. Like they'll have different personalities. Like I was working with one client, and she, her angels are always there, right on every call. And she was going through a season of really being stressed and really just like putting her nose to the grindstone. And that's really not her personality. And so it was super uncomfortable for her. And her angels, like I just could picture them like wearing like leis and what are the large Mexican hats? Sombreros. Like, I mean, they were like, she needs to have some fun. Like, bring that fun vibe in. Like, they want us to be joyful and they want to be partners with us and they want to use their gifts to help us. Like, it makes perfect sense to me that they would go dress shopping with you.
Yeah. And it's also so super humbling. And, I've seen people flip in and out of the space of like feeling totally alone. Right. And that to me is the saddest space to be in, is feeling like you're just completely alone. I mean, I have some thoughts around like the dark night of the soul, where it's kind of like a spiritual preparation process where God does withhold a lot of that knowledge of the support, but shall I say, he doesn't forsake us, but that's our perception, is that we're being forsaken for whatever reason. But what he's actually doing is advancing us, helping us evolve and getting us to tap in to find our true presence within, so that we don't feel separate from it. And that's why he withdraws. But I also see in my mind's eye, even in those times, even with the person ready to take their life, I just, in my mind's eye, I just see an encircling of that person. And I didn't used to believe that necessarily, because we can feel so utterly alone in this life. And I see one of the purposes of life is to wake up to the fact that we are divinely held and supported at all times. And I love what you talked about, the board meeting, like calling your council together. I teach people to do that with their archetypes. Like one of my archetypes is Wonder Woman. One of them is Mary Magdalene. Yeah. I have like 5. And I know Wonder Woman's not real, but I just like her. So I just, in my mind's eye, I call these archetypes to the table. I'm like, what do you think that you should, what would Wonder Woman do? What would Mary Magdalene do? What would Christ do? And so anyway, I love the idea of doing that with the angelic realm and your support team there, like kind of calling the conference together and, what's our intention? How do you see angels working with your intention? That's like the higher level, like, yeah, there's the dress and the grocery store stuff and whatever, can't find the car keys. But then what about our highest intentions? Or even a daily intention? How does that, is that where you bring in the board and you say, because I've had times where I think I have a high intention around something, and then when I pray about it or reflect on it or meditate it, it's like, no, there's a deeper intention behind that. And sometimes we aren't completely aware of what that is. How do you do?
Yeah, so I'm still learning on this one, but I just am finding, like, if I do have an intention for my day or for an event or for an impact or whatever, and I just can picture in my mind, okay, angels, like, we've got this coming up. Like, I seriously have to just bring it down to like my level. And it's like, seriously, a board meeting, because I can picture that. Right. And that makes it easier for me to exercise faith and to bring my own intention to it. But I can just picture us having a meeting and being like, okay, angels, we've got an event coming up. My intention is this. Is there more? Does anybody have any ideas? And I just kind of listen. And it's like, oh, okay. So my event, I'm thinking it should be more spiritual, or I'm thinking it should have a vibe of this. And then the thought will come, well, what about fun? And it's like, oh, okay, you're right. And I'm not necessarily identifying which angel is saying that or anything. I just pictured them collectively sitting with me at times. But I might also do a board meeting with Heavenly Father or with Christ, and that back to your question about voices, like that's one way to start learning how to differentiate. It's like, no, I'm having a meeting with my angels today. Or I've got a meeting with Heavenly Father today. And that helps. And then when it comes to the intention, I just am hoping that they will help me see bigger things than I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. And that those thoughts will come to mind. But I do have, but I don't know if I'd use the word testimony or if there's a stronger word, but I do have awareness for sure that our intentions can be aligned with their intentions, and you can ask their intentions, right? As you become more and more familiar that they're there, it's like, well, this is what I'm thinking for this trip. What would be better? Do you have any better ideas? And it's like, oh, I would have never thought of going to do that. Like, I don't know. It just gives you another layer of life that can make it more fun than just my simple ideas that come to mind.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Ashlee, this has been awesome. And I would love to just close out with just gratitude for you gifting us a different way of looking at how we can be more creative, I guess, with our, not only just our daily walk through life, but the overall higher intentions and how we are totally held and supported in that. So thank you so much for your time. This has been really fascinating.
Oh, you are welcome. Thanks so much for what you're doing. I love that you have opened yourself up to having these conversations and creating a space where we can think about new things and challenging us a little bit to grow.
Awesome. Thanks. I love it. I can just eat it. I like eat this stuff up. Like, I love
so fun.
Like, the unseen and the mystery. It's just fascinating to me. So keep doing what you're doing. It's needed.
Thank you.
I really like this idea of having angels in your corner. I like the idea of having a boardroom of angels, and like you can have these board meetings and you can call these conferences because you are part God, because God lives in you. God is helping you direct your inner and outer planes of existence. And so like if the Bible says that God has given angels charge concerning us, how can we not, as one with God, give angels charge over our lives and our loved ones? I think that just came to me when I was talking with Ashlee, and I've been thinking a lot about it since. We aren't alone, and we are divinely held and supported, and we can be in our sphere and be master and commander of our own existence in relation to God and however we define him or her or they. So again, I hope you will check out my Stand, Speak, Shine school. It's standspeakshine.com. I'm taking a limited number of women through. It's already starting to fill up. People are getting excited. I'm thrilled beyond measure. This is something I've always wanted to do. Creation is kind of the, I guess you could say, the foundational aspect to this entire program is what will you create? How will you create a new you in this coming year and forevermore? So have a great week and remember who you are.